and unmute you guys, and then let everybody else, let the rest of the waiting room in. And people kind of slowly start filtering in. Cool?
All righty. Sounds good.
All right.
Sorry, I just had to do my little Jay Davis dance. I saw he came in.
Hooray for Jay Davis.
These here. That's what I'm making.
Awesome. So, hello and welcome everybody to Tea Talks 416, April 16th, 2020. I just celebrated my 1 month in quarantine. I think probably a lot of other people are approaching that same quarantine anniversary. Thank you guys for being here. We're playing with a new format for the day. We've got a panel here to discuss conscious entrepreneurship. We've got Elise Peterson from Feel It. Elise, what are you drinking today?
I am going to be drinking some white tea from Nepal. Just a little sample I had here. Looking forward to something fresh and light today.
Awesome. Our next guest is from Austin, Texas. He's got a tea house there and a online tea company called West China Tea Company. Sohan, what are you drinking today?
I'm drinking this little mini bing of Sheng Pu'er. This is Gushu Cha, and it's this, here, I'll unwrap it for you. It comes as this little coin, which is really neat. It's just like one little dose of tea, and it's really nice. It's Gushu Cha. You can see it's got nice big leaves. So I'm excited about this. First Pu'er I've had all day. So thanks, Eric, for that idea.
All right. Yeah. Our next guest is Eric Ashish Chernessen. He's got an online Gong Fu Cha school called Learn Gong Fu Cha. Eric, what are you drinking today?
I am drinking a 90s show.
He's got an online... Awesome. And our last guest is the founder of Exalted Tea, a company that uses tea as a tool to teach theology and meditative prayer. His name is Jeremy Welch. Jeremy, welcome. What are you drinking today?
Playing it safe and going with 18 Ruby, which never fails.
Awesome. So the prompt that kind of brought us to this panel today came from an email conversation that Jamie and I had about how we could monetize our projects. And that led me to ask the question, how do we develop a monetization structure for our tea projects, which are all very passionate about? Jeremy, what do you think on that?
I missed your intro because somebody's background, there's like a garbage truck driving by.
We all here still?
I'm sorry. I think that's my fault.
That's okay.
The background noise.
No problem. So, Jeremy, I was just reflecting on the conversation you and I were having via email about monetization structures and having something that's sustainable.
Yeah.
The way that I look at sustainability, it's all about making sure that both sides of any, you want to call it a transaction, both sides are getting everything they need so that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think I mentioned that eventually a value needs to be placed on these kind of virtual services, which means at some point we'd probably have to expect participants to pay a fee or a membership. But I think that wouldn't be an issue getting people involved that way if we incentivize them.
Okay. So how do you propose we incentivize?
It's basically any participant in these forums that like sell things online, like me. Whoever's sort of a paid member into the service, I could just offer something like 5% off, 10% off a single purchase. So on your end, you have the membership fees to pay it for cost, and then on our end, it drives business our way. But at least the customer has value in the product, as well as they get to kind of like further participate in it, since they'll be buying products from all the participants.
Okay. That totally makes sense. Does anybody else have ideas for how we incentivize participation?
Well, I think just making it as interactive as possible. In my experience so far with hosting these virtual tea events, the most engagement comes when, you know, things are happening live, of course, like happening right now. People watching, I'm sure, are going to be interested in asking some questions and commenting on what we're talking about. But, you know, and I think tea is such a great tool, maybe compared to other things that people are trying to play with in the virtual world. Tea is it already is so connecting and so, you know, in the moment that people are going to be more receptive to that interactivity. But, you know, just having our tea in front of us, like making sure that your tea and your tea vessels and your activities are visual and kind of in the forefront of what you're doing, I think is a part of that as well. You know, so I think there is a much different experience for the attendee of these events when you have the camera like panned in right at your face versus, you know, having your tea in front of you, which kind of encourages people to feel like, because this has happened for me a lot. People like randomly come upon like one of my live events, not expecting that they wanted to have tea, not expecting that they're going to be a part of it. But then just by seeing this and hearing me, even if I'm talking by myself, they'll tune in and they'll say, hey, yeah, I put the kettle on because I wasn't expecting to do it, but this just looked like too much fun. I had to jump in on it. So, yeah, I think it's important to make it as interactive as possible.
Yeah, if tea is happening, then people are going to want to people are especially going to want to get involved and have tea.
Mm-hmm.
To me, a big part of this is having people here in the Zoom room. I think makes, even though a lot of our guests right now are on mute, I think just the fact that they are in this space with us is probably also a big step towards keeping them involved. Because it's different from consuming content on the live stream. Here, they're actually in a separate window without Facebook. And I think in my experience attending events like this, it's definitely helped with making me feel more engaged in the event.
Exactly. I love that Priscilla is part of it, and she's laying in bed.
I don't blame her. So Jeremy is suggesting a monetization method around subscription. Eric, that's similar to what you do with Learn Kung Fu Tea, right?
Well, yes. However, we haven't mentioned, I also run a software company that sells subscription software, and I've been doing this for 10 years. So I think that's kind of more relevant than my newly launched Kung Fu Tea business to the conversation. And to me, I think we jumped very quick from the concept of sustainability to monetization. I don't necessarily think that they're immediately related to each other. In fact, in a lot of cases, I think that jumping to monetization too quickly is a sign of not paying attention to sustainability. Monetization, I think, should be a natural happening, and your audience should essentially tell you when you should monetize something. from a sustainability perspective, especially with new businesses, the first thing to ensure is that you are sustainable and that you are committed to building something. Because if you're not, you don't have the energy and the enthusiasm, it doesn't matter what you charge, because a lot of people will want to use monetization as a way to make them enthusiastic. That's never going to stick. So it's essential, I think, for people wanting to start a new business that they actually go all in. They give of themselves, and they have a passion for it, because ultimately passion is what's going to attract people, whether it's related to tea or any type of business. And there are some skills to learn. You need to maybe learn how to organize and run an event like this. It depends on who your audience is. But there are some fundamental things that I think come way before thinking about monetization.
I 100% agree with you. My intention for Tea Talks, which I think is kind of where our original conversation started, is really around bringing the global tea community together. So we're in week 5 right now, and back when we first started, I reached out to Sohan and was like, hey, let's do an online tea party where we can get people together. Then next week we got Elise involved, and we were in 3 different countries. And to me, the idea that all of our individual communities are not necessarily connected when we're all out in the physical world, but here in the multiverse, there's no barrier to connecting that. So that's really what I'm looking to explore. So if the more momentum and more energy that we can build around this connection, monetization will come. I feel like I feel just having you guys here holding this space with you, I'm getting everything that I've come for out of Tea Talk. And to me, that's the key of sustainability. We all need to be getting out of this experience what we are looking to.
Yeah, I think that it's really important for us to not immediately jump, like as Ashish said, to immediately jump to monetization on this actual activity that we're doing. But it's also sustainable and smart in the long term vision of what you're doing and why you're doing these things, of figuring out how you're going to monetize it eventually. So that's important, and in this time, virtual events and live, like, people are like absorbing it like crazy right now. So like now is the time to be honing in your skills and practicing these things. But I think expecting to charge for it or monetize directly on the content, directly from the consumer of the content, is going to lead you into a lot of disappointment. So you kind of got to get creative, either through finding sponsors for the content, which is like kind of the traditional kind of like radio show model, right? Where, you regularly broadcast some content and have some commercial sponsor, supporting you and doing that in exchange for exposure of their brand. Now, if that is in alignment with our, kind of the mutually understood definition of tea and the tea lifestyle that we've talked about in the past, I don't think so. So that's where the conflict for us comes in, is that we kind of have to pave new paths. And I've seen some retailers doing quite a good job at it, where they're creating that content and the content itself is free and accessible to everybody. And that's good marketing, right? Everybody is kind of learning that you're an expert and that you're knowledgeable on this certain area. But the monetization comes in providing tea samples that'll be, tasted during these sessions, and to experience that exclusivity of drinking the same tea while the content is being delivered is like the premium that people pay for.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, I agree a lot with actually what everyone's been saying. Just to go back to what Jeremy was saying, that and what Elise just said, is that for me, what makes sense is you don't want to alienate people by saying, oh, you have to be a subscriber to join this. We do this, we've been doing Tea Talks. It's been great. I love coming to do these, and I have such a great time at them. And growing the community is about making that accessible to people. And, you could have two tracks of participation. One is just the entry-level free participation. You could go, you register for free on Eventbrite, and then you're just participating. You get the enjoyment of being in this conversation in this room. And then you've got another tier of membership where it's monetized, and that gives you access to these discounts. We got Eric and Elise and Jeremy and everyone else in this room who is in the tea industry and has products that can be purchased, being able to offer people a discount on that. I just very casually dropped a discount code 2 days ago in a live stream that I was doing, and we got a ton of revenue. We got a ton of sales from that. So that was definitely worth it to me as a tea merchant. And then to speak to what Eric was saying, I think that it's this concept of value first. Give something first, give something free of charge, and be consistent. Sam, you've been doing a great job of hosting this every week, showing up. I know that on Thursday, whether I'm there or not, Tea Talks is going to be happening, and I've managed to be there every week. But and we've watched it grow through that process. I think I did a Gong Fu Cha class last week, and I'm doing another one tomorrow. And we had 16 people in the Gong Fu Cha class, and a lot of that comes from, I've been teaching this class for 12 years. I've been studying Gong Fu Cha for 17 years, and Eric, we've been putting out free content through Tea House Ghost. For 4 years, we've been putting out free content, full production value, that we pay a production crew to come and make this content. And we have, 20 something episodes on Tea House Ghost. And I've had dozens of people come to me and say, I learned how to pour tea by watching your videos. I live somewhere where there is no tea house. I learned how to pour tea by watching you on YouTube. And I think that what we're seeing right now is, I'm holding another one tomorrow, and I've got a bunch of people signed up for that already. And a lot of that comes from having put in the time, having put in the work to study in China, to study with people to whom the culture belongs, to put out free content that authenticates that legitimizes that. And so for Tea Talks, for example, they've got their value first, which is you can come and do this for free. You can come and be in this room and be with all these tea people and have tea with all of us and be part of the community for free. And if you want to heighten your engagement, then you can have a subscription, which Tea Talks gets paid at subscription. And then the participants, like, those of us who are in the tea industry, who are in this room, I have no doubt that if we were to have a list of coupon codes for all of this, for all of our different companies, that we would be getting a lot of returns on that investment. And from the consumer perspective, from the perspective of a participant, they get to, have, and there's other perks you can add, community perks, but they get to have access to all of these different discounts from all these different tea companies, and they can really expand their tea knowledge from one place and from people that they know. They've talked to those people.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, I wanna bring a tough question up in relation to that. What is the revenue needed to support our efforts? If we were to get a discount code and I was to receive, $300 in orders, that'd be fabulous. It'd feel great. But is that enough to support what we're doing? You know what I mean? So, when it comes to, rent and overhead and then paying our own payroll and whatever employees' payroll that we have, we're talking about bigger numbers here. That, a few orders from a handful of people is probably not going to be enough to support, and I hate to be negative here, but I think it's an important question that I think was kind of the purpose of this conversation is how do we really monetize what we're doing?
You're absolutely right. The challenge is if your business is solely based on a good that you're selling, you're only dealing with margins in terms of how you make money. So really, all of us should be in content businesses, right? Because if your only option is making money by goods that you're selling, like you said, it's not going to cover your overhead. And offering a discount, while it may bring you more business, ultimately won't necessarily help you financially. At least over time. In the beginning, it might be useful to do that to attract new business and get firm customers, but there does need to be a plan over time of what's it called in the subscription world, increasing your customer lifetime value. Customer lifetime value is how much money a customer spends with you over the lifetime of being with you. And this tea is a perfect arena to be able to have content businesses because there's so much nuance to how you actually prepare this beverage. People can buy tea from you, but how do they brew it? Each one of us could endlessly do something. And, Soham was talking, like I've been teaching for 12 years, and that's amazing. And at the same time, one of the beauties of tea is that it does not mean that if you've just started last year, like I think even on your virtual tea fest, there was that guy, Mike from San Francisco. I mean, he only started doing tea a year ago. But because of his personality and because of how he's willing to put himself out there, he's already transforming his knowledge into sharing and teaching. And there's nothing in the tea world that says you can't do that or you have to have a certain amount of experience, or that it's not that people with less experience is less valid. It's just different perspectives. So everybody has the opportunity to bring content and content monetization into their business. And I think it's essential for.
Sure, I 100% agree. I think so I've been talking with a lot of my coworkers about this, and we are working on this idea of what Charles Eisenstein calls a potlatch society, where your status within a society or within a community is based on your contributions, not based on any sort of like social standing. So the people that give the most, that show up the most, are naturally going to rise to the top. And I think especially with our current economic situation and everything that's happening with COVID, I think we're going to see the companies that are out there that are really doing what they can to support people are giving people the warm fuzzy feelings. And the email that I got from AT&T about how they're supporting COVID really just didn't seem to do it for me. Because it really just felt like they were trying to upsell me on new service because I'm going to be home all day.
Right.
I think it's. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. It's like I think it's important that at some point we need to place a value on this content or on this service, but we're still kind of far away from that. As soon as we can get how many people we can get involved, how regularly and how predictable all these talks and contributions can be, can we actually assess a value to it? So I think it's true. Monetization should always be in our mind, but it still is far enough away. Because I think we all have something different to contribute. It's just that once we get that core community in place, so that the people who are, the potential members or whoever participants at least have that reliability, that comfort on their side that he's going to be here then, he's going to be here then, she'll be talking, tomorrow. So I think it's just all about trying to gather that community in the most organized and predictable fashion for these people.
That definitely makes sense. So, Hum, are you going to jump in there too?
So when I started doing this in Austin, in like 2012, there was no tea community in Austin to speak of. There was a few scattered people who were aware of Chinese tea and gong fu cha as a concept. And so there was no, even for the tea service itself, even taking tea leaves that I bought and serving it to people with my time, and that did not necessarily present as having value at that time because people didn't know what it was and they didn't think of it as something they should pay for. And so when I first started, I served tea for free every Tuesday and Friday. I called it office hours. And I would just serve tea for free during those times. And there was no pressure on anyone to buy anything, but people did buy stuff. People bought teaware. People bought tea. Eventually, I started teaching my class here in Austin as well, and started charging people to take the class. And that's really where the initial money from that started this company came from, is just doing something for free, and something that actually does have beyond just my time and monetary value. I was using tea that I had bought to do this, but I was taking that loss and not necessarily expecting. There were plenty of times that I'd have office hours and 5 or 7 people would show up and no one bought any tea or gave me any money. And that was fine because we were growing the tea culture. Since then, every tea house I've had on Sunday, we have an event called Community, which is free. It's donation-based, essentially free. I've had people who would come to every community every week and never spend any money, never make a donation, never buy anything for 2 or 3 years. But then after 2 or 3 years, all of a sudden they've got a new job and they come in and they buy a tea set and they buy tea, and then they're buying tea every week. And they're also bringing their friends. This whole time they're bringing their friends, and their friends are getting introduced to tea, and their friends are learning how to pour tea and serving other people. And so it's very difficult to estimate the lifetime value of a guest, of a member of the community, because there are indirect value that they bring, because they're sharing, like Eric was saying, you don't have to have been studying for any amount of time to be able to share tea culture with people. Everyone has their own unique perspective and their own unique way of doing things. And even that distinctiveness itself has value. And what I found here in Austin is that the more that potlatch attitude, the more that we show up, the more that we're putting into the community, the more that we get back. And it's not this transactional scenario where it's like, okay, you came to this thing, so now you pay me money for it. It's that you've come and you've made yourself part of the community, and it hasn't cost you anything up to this point, but you have loyalty and affection for the company because of that. As you were talking about, Sam, seeing what people do put into the community and the effort that they put in, it means something to a consumer.
Definitely. Does anybody have anything left to add? We've spent a lot of time discussing the revenue and monetization side of sustainability. I would like to flip to the other side of the equation and look at our business practices and our expense side of running a business that helps make things sustainable. So,
I have something to add. I think Sohan in his description of how he started his business is very common. And it should be understood that if you're going to start something, it may be years before you see anything back. And that's why, like when I started my software business, I didn't make a dime for 5 years. And so that's why it's such an essential ingredient, your passion. Because that's the thing that sustains you over the periods of time where you're not going to be making anything. You invest your time. In Sohan's case, early days, he had to create the market essentially. Luckily now, as tea people, we don't have to create the market. In fact, the tea market is growing as far as I can see, and there's more demand for it. So at least we don't have to create the market now. But we still need to invest ourselves and consistently. Consistency is the biggest currency that we have when we're starting a new business. And overthinking things in terms of planning is the enemy. Things are not far away. You know, we shouldn't be telling ourselves that certain things are a certain distance away from us, because first of all, we don't know. And automatically, if we're thinking about how far away something is, it immediately shifts our focus from what we can do now to to something we're waiting for. And energetically, that has an impact on how people will feel when they're working with you in terms of what you're trying to grow. So I'll just leave it at that.
No, cheers to that. I will drink to that for sure. So yeah, at the beginning, businesses are not sustainable. We have to put more into them than we can pull out of them. That's just the nature of trying to build a business out of a passion like tea. So looking on the other side of the equation, that's where I know, Elise, you're doing a lot of work less around financial sustainability and more around making sure that our supply chains are sustainable and that we're treating our sources properly.
Yeah. So that's another angle of sustainability that oftentimes gets overlooked in business, because in business we're so pressured to make money and support the financial end of it, which is important. And that's why I always bring it up and I always challenge people to think more about money. That's like been the biggest breakthrough that I've made personally in this business as I've been going on this journey over the past 8 years is learning to be comfortable with saying that I'm motivated by money. And it's not necessarily an evil thing, because when you have strong financial systems that you're building upon, then your other value systems will be even stronger as well. So, when I started this company, I was not a tea connoisseur. I was in no place to be teaching people about how to pour tea or how to serve tea. And I think that's actually an advantage, because I still hold on to that kind of lack of attachment to knowledge. Maybe I have some knowledge by default just from all the exposure I've had. But more importantly, my work of promoting sustainability, like environmental and economic sustainability in these marginalized communities where tea predominantly comes from, has given me access to a network of people that have that knowledge. And so that's why my whole marketing mind is not about my specific knowledge, but about everybody else's. And so I appreciate that you guys allow me to share your knowledge, and I hope you guys get benefit from it. It's a symbiotic, mutually beneficial type of thing I'm hoping to build. Not overlooking money is important, but also not overlooking the sustainability of the systems upon our businesses are made of. In the social entrepreneurship world, there is a term called externalized costs. And these externalized costs are often the numbers that are left off of the spreadsheets and left off of the balance sheets of how a business runs. And that could be treatment of the people that work to produce your product, treatment of the environment, treatment and sustainability of the resources such as water and soil and energy and air and all of these things. If the business just plugs along making money and not taking those costs into consideration in their bottom line, it is actually going to be very detrimental to the sustainability of their business and the sustainability of the legacy of their business. If you're trying to build a legacy type business, which I think all entrepreneurs, very successful ones, should be focused on. We shouldn't be focused on building a flash in the pan type business that we'll just exit on and make our money and go on with our lives. What satisfaction and happiness is in that, I have no idea. But there is satisfaction in building a business like General Electric or AT&T, as you said, businesses that are going to continue to evolve and remain strong businesses in the community that we're constantly providing value to the community. So I think with the information that is easily shareable now and the access to connections and also to the stakeholders themselves that possess the inputs of information about these externalized costs, which a lot of times business, it wasn't their fault. They just didn't know those things. But now it's you got to be having your eyes closed and not giving a shit about people if you don't address those things. That's been the core of my work, has been trying to bring those things to everybody's attention that, monoculturing has this effect on the soil and the productivity of the soil, which, yeah, you may not care about the subsistence crops of the people that live there. That's fine. You don't have to care about them. That's okay. Like, they're not your family. They're not your community. I understand that you don't care. They're not in front of your face. But you're going to care about the supply of your product 15, 20 years from now, because that's your business. That's directly connected to you. And so that's always been a big part in my conversation around sustainability is reminding businesses that caring about these things is not just the hippie thing to do, that it's smart business.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. I mean, I think we're seeing even here in the U.S. in across the board in other industries, just looking at the way companies treat their employees, that companies are often consuming their employees. I mean, I definitely in my background of accounting, there's kind of this ethos of you're going to go to one of the big four accounting firms and either they're going to eat you up and spit you out, but you're going to have something great on your resume for it, or they're going to indoctrinate you into a partner track that'll have you set for life. But it's really only one of those two. It's not something that I felt like really would have helped me develop professionally.
Yeah, for sure. I think sustainability, the challenge with talking about sustainability is the sustainability and what it means is a moving target depending on where you are in your business and what it's going to take for you to get to the next level. So like you were saying, Elise, certainly we have to pay attention to the financial aspects. Otherwise, that's not sustainable, because if we can't sustain ourselves, then we can't help anybody. So it is essential to pay attention to the finances. But this is part of the challenge, I think, in growing businesses. You have to have a mind towards the future, and you also can't get too far ahead of yourself. Otherwise, you'll freak yourself out, especially depending on your personality type. There's so many details to focus on in business, and it asks so much of you, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. And so sustainability also has, in my opinion, has a big thing to do with recognizing where your weaknesses are and finding people who you can work with who are going to offset those weaknesses. So if you're not a money person, you'll need to find somebody who's going to help you handle those things.
So as we build teams, that also increases the complexity of the needs that need to be met, because now it's not just my needs that need to be met, it's also my partner's needs that need to be met.
Of course, but this is the whole thing. Everybody wants to start a business because they think that the end goal is them making money, but people don't actually realize fully that when starting a business, you are basically founding a community. You are committing to building something and supporting everybody who's involved in that community, including your team, including your customers. So you are becoming the founding member of a town, and you're committing yourself to take care of those people. You may not realize this in the beginning, but if your business is successful, that's where you're going to end up. And at any point in time, as you're going to that point, this is where people exit. They're like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up for that. The thing is, if you start a business and it is successful, your role will change and you will have to adapt. Otherwise, it's not going to work.
Yeah, the point of starting the business is to keep the business going as long as you can. It's you approach it with a very different mindset to, I'm going to start a business and try and sell it for a 10x multiplier.
Yeah,
well, that's fine. That's fine. It all depends on the personality. That doesn't necessarily mean, just because somebody wants to have an exit strategy. it's not a straightforward thing. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. You know, it's just so complex and nuanced.
But I really like what you're saying, Eric. Just all the stuff you're saying, and you're right. Being motivated solely by profit, money, selling out is not necessarily bad, morally bad. But what it doesn't provide is the fortitude and the grit necessary to soldier through those lean times. Because if what you're there for is just for the payoff, and you're having to sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice with no visible payoff in down the road, that can be one of these things that leads people to, like you said, check out at that point. Like, you know what? I didn't sign up for this. I'm here to. This is my job. I'm here to make money. Like when I started West China Tea, I wasn't actually starting it to make money. I was starting it because I had this tea that I really liked. It was better than any tea that I could get. I drank it all and I wanted to get some more. And the only way I could ship it over was to start a company. Wholesale. I had to file a DBA to get an FDA registered food handling facility. An individual can't do that. But I wasn't trying to do it as my job. I had another job at that point, and I was doing medical research. And so it wasn't until that other job fell through and my medical research company that I worked for folded, and I found myself unemployed. But I was like, well, I've got this tea company and I've got all this tea that I got. Maybe I could sell it. And that was kind of my initial motivation. And then for me, the money part has been, how do I fund this community? How do I keep bringing over tea? Because tea is the blood of this community. No tea community. And how do I sustain this organism and keep it alive? Well, with more tea. And how do I get more tea? Well, with money.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Sure.
The answer to that question, where did it come from? Did you come up with the answer to that question, or did it come from somewhere else?
Which question?
The question of how am I going to sustain this business?
I mean, it kind of just did itself, to be honest, because I was like, well, I brought over this tea and then I just drank it with me and my tea friends who lived in Austin, who are already into tea from back in the day, and from the people that I got into it when I was here. I just drank. I didn't have that much, but it was better than what I could get, online or at a tea store in America. And I was like, well, I'm out of tea. I need to get more tea. Where am I going to go? I'm not going to go buy it and pay the import fees to an import company. I'm just going to buy it from these farmers that I know, and I can get a better price for it, and I like it better. So I'm just going to go get it. And then I went and got it, and kind of people were just throwing in on the order. And that first order, I wasn't making a profit. My friends were just like, hey, like my friend Eric, who I knew from Jade Weave's Tea House back in the day. He was like, oh, that tea that you've been getting, you're getting more of it? I want some. Let me give you some money. And I was like, okay, cool. The shipping will be cheaper if more people are getting in together to get a bigger shipment. And then when that shipment got sent back to China, because I didn't have the FDA clearance to do it, then I was like, oh shit, I need to start a business and I need to do this thing. And then a year later, when my medical research company folded, I was sitting on this shipment of tea, and the question was like, okay, well, we're rain butter. We've got rain butter, which is a choux puer. And then I was like, well, we're getting down to the bottom of this bag of rain butter, but I've sold enough to get some more. And so I can get some more. And so honestly, it was a very unconscious, automatic process for me, whereby I needed more tea and people wanted the tea that I had, and I was selling it to them at a price that I could get more. And it was almost like, it was very, I used to sell tea out of the back of a truck in a parking lot.
I think we need to mute Patrick's channel.
Patrick is not showing audio.
Oh, so where's the echo coming from?
I don't know.
Might be coming from me. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself. I think Jeremy's been trying to jump in.
Is it?
Good. Oh. I had a similar experience, Sohan. So that's why I asked, because I spent the early part of my company time like asking so many questions. How can I do this? How can I do that? And then, fast forward 5 years, I look back and I realized me trying to make things happen actually made things go more slowly. All of the critical things that helped my business to go forward were things you could call circumstance or luck or opportunity, whatever, things that I didn't have any control over, but I was prepared for. And that's why at this point in time, I think I constantly say the most important ingredients are your passion and alignment. Because if you're aligned, then that, to me, alignment is the energetic sensation you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, then you will be supported. But if you go into something because you want a particular outcome, and I get it. It can be very seductive to say, I need money, and try to just go for it, or I need something, whatever. Money is just an easy currency to look at because it's so tangible, but there are many types of currency. Like, for example, you say when you first started your business, in the beginning, you weren't getting any return, but the fact of the matter is you were getting a return. It wasn't monetary, but there was a synergy there. There was a feedback loop. You were getting a lot out of that.
Absolutely.
So, and that's alignment to me.
Absolutely. I was getting a lot. I was getting community, which is one of the most fundamental human needs. And I think that this whole situation and the degree of community and cohesion we're seeing in the tea family is evidence of that. And just to speak to what you're saying about this concept of serendipity, opportunity, luck, in Chinese, that word is yuanfan. And yuanfan is, here in the West, we think of serendipity as random coincidences that are just completely, they align because of just the luck of the draw, it's probability. And it's the exception to the rule. Normally things follow this orderly, logical, physical pattern. And then sometimes something will happen just at the right place at the right time. And that's just, it's fate, it's chance. But in China, the concept of yuanfan is that it's a physical force, just like gravity. The physical force of gravity draws objects with mass together. The force of yuanfan draws things that are in alignment with each other together. And to the Chinese, it's just as much a fact of life as the weather. And actually, there's a special species of yuanfan called cha yuan, meaning tea destiny. And that comes from this widespread recognition in Chinese culture and Chinese society that strange coincidences, strange alignments happen because of tea and around tea. And it's such a well-established phenomenon that you can go to a tea shop in China and buy a tea cloth with these words cha yuan embossed in them, because it's people know this word. And I agree. Everything that's happened, we closed Guanyin Tea House at the beginning of March because the lease ended. The lease was ending at the end of March. And so we closed Guanyin, and I was preparing to renovate and redecorate and restructure and open West China Tea as the new tea house in the same location. And then COVID-19 happened. And so I had a month of rent set aside, anticipating making no revenue from the tea house. I had budgeted for that. And then COVID-19 happened, and I waited to re-sign the lease until after Mercury was out of retrograde. And people were pushing me really hard. People were like, when are you going to sign? When are you going to sign? Let's start working on the place. When are you going to sign? And I was like, I don't know, you guys. Mercury's in retrograde. It doesn't seem like a good idea. And lo and behold, Mercury exited retrograde on the 10th and was out of the shadow of retrograde on the 12th. And on the 12th is when we got the announcement that shelter in place was going to happen here in Austin. And I was able to negotiate with my landlord to pay a quarter of rent for the entire time that the quarantine is in effect. Nice. And so that was huge cha yuan for me, because now I I'm able to pay for 4 months of rent with what I budgeted for one. And I have more time to renovate the tea house, and I don't have to worry about losing momentum on the tea house because nothing's going on. The world is no longer happening without the tea house, and the tea house is being left behind. When we're ready to start back up, people are going to be so starved for human interaction. And so all of those things align for us here in Austin to have the best possible situation for the tea house. And I don't think of it as just random chance. I believe that was by design, not my design, but it was by design.
I agree. How do you feel about this, Jeremy and Elise?
Well, I was going to jump in when we were talking a little bit about mindset, and this is from my experience selling teas, that when I started a few years ago, it was just my whole mentality was gaining customers. It was just right from the start. I needed to be a sustainable business, and I thought, let me just gain customers. And it was only recently where someone was kind of walking me through it. It says your mindset's not off. You don't gain customers, you build a community. And once that community is in place, then you're going to have this very engaged, very active people. And they said you had to make that decision. Are you going to go after everybody? But it's usually going to result in people who are very casual and you'll see every once in a while. Or do you want to build like a more concentrated, smaller community, and they're going to be very engaged and active all the time? So we said it was just two completely different mentalities, but it gets you to the same spot. It gets you to a sustainable business. So that's, so when that mindset changed for me, it was just a matter of how am I going to sustain this business? So it became a matter of me identifying an audience and then really focus. So like I became a hyper-focused tea company going after a very specific customer. And the idea is that once that community is in place and once that community is engaged, it's just people are going to gravitate to it.
Right.
But it really was a big mindset. Sort of, what are the priorities? But in a strange way, it was a whole different mindset, but it led me to the same place. And one I cared about and one I don't.
Yeah. Sorry, Sam, I muted you because it's the echo.
Oh, I apologize. So we've been going for about 45 minutes, or almost approaching an hour, actually. And I see there's a couple questions in the chat. So I want to give our participants here the opportunity to ask their questions. I know a number of them are also tea business owners. So you guys have questions and you just want to go ahead and raise your hand, I can unmute you. If anybody has questions that they wanted to ask. Priscilla was asking if you could say again in Chinese, how do you say tea destiny and tea community?
Oh, he's muted.
So unmute so.
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself because I thought I was causing the echo. And okay, there we go. That's much better. Sam, it's your echo. Yuan Fan, Priscilla, Yuan Fan means serendipity in general. And then Cha Yuan means tea destiny, tea serendipity. And also, I've got to stop at 5. But if anyone has any questions specifically for me, I'd be totally happy to field them before I go. Or 5 by the hour. I've got to stop at the hour.
If there's no other questions, we can go.
I was muted.
A couple breakout rooms, and that'll give us like small groups of 5 or 6, and we can hang out and enjoy it.
Before breakout, I was just going to jump in and say thank you. I enjoyed the space. I was listening the whole time, and Eric, your cogent summaries and poignant prompts were quite wonderful. So I don't presently have more words than that, but I appreciated many and wrote down quite
well. Thanks, Brian. And I will mention I actually do an entrepreneur podcast. If you are interested in a lot more depth in terms of what we've talked about, it's called subscriptionentrepreneur.com, and there's tons of stuff on there if you are interested in more of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in, that we've been talking a lot about everybody's personal experiences with taking our time and building community, and it's totally necessary. It's, everybody's story, and will continue to be everybody's story, and getting into the business of tea. But I just want to hold space and like let people know that like right now is a very interesting time, and a lot more pressure is on us than usual, to try to figure out this puzzle of financially supporting ourselves and building our communities. So I don't think it's too out of the question to think in that way. Taking your time to build that community and putting that consistency in, but at the same time, yeah, you just got to get really clever with how to make money. And I think that we've given a couple of suggestions and anecdotes about what's worked now. But I think times like these is like for every sector bringing innovation. So I really look forward to seeing all the innovation that comes out from everybody here and everybody within our community about how to support ourselves and finding our passion, because maybe we don't have another job to fall back on right now. So like 100% of our time is in tea, and 100% of our future financial future is in our tea communities. So yeah, I just want to encourage everybody to get innovative, be vulnerable, be bold, and like Ashish just keeps reiterating, be consistent. Yeah.
And start.
Yeah, just do
Do
it.
something. Don't think about it. Danny has a question, I think.
Hi, everyone. It's not actually a question. Hi, Elise. Hi, Sam. Hi, Eric. Hi, everybody. So actually in Brazil, so I've told you the last time I was here with you, that I started a movement, like an association. It's called the Slow Tea, and we're gathering like all the brands together. Actually, we have like some social work, some like we're studying indigenous plants and supporting small growers, like for not necessarily Camellia sinensis, but other herbal teas. And one of the things we're doing now for COVID-19 is that we've launched a marketplace for all of the tea brands in Brazil. So we are now like around 50 different brands, like people who own tea blending companies, like small tea blending companies, but we're all together, and we've done like, how do you say that, like a distribution center in my hometown, which is in Curitiba. So everybody's sending their tea, and we're launching a marketplace so everybody can work together. And like, to be in the marketplace, people should write, they should how to say that, they should produce content. So it's like, it attracts people, it attracts tea lovers to buy tea, and tea lovers can come into the marketplace, buy tea from all of those different brands. So we think that's a good solution. I don't know yet the results for it, because we're going to launch it within like 10 days, and then I'll let you know, but I think it's going to work. Hopefully.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Bold. There was a question that came through Facebook. I'll go ahead and share it, and maybe some folks here. And this is from an aspiring tea entrepreneur, so kind of nice, somebody that's hasn't started yet. But this is a Michael Maston. Says he's interested in learning if it's better to order wholesale from other companies and resell those, or rebrand them under his brand, or to try to import directly and jump through those hoops. Anybody want to answer that?
Am I muted? Am I hearable right now?
You're hearable.
Yeah.
We just can't see you.
Okay, cool. I'll turn on my camera in a second. This will be probably my last little response, but I'll say this. I mean, it's a lot of work, and like, Elise can speak to this. Elise is an importer. I'm an importer. And anyone else who is, an actual importer, it's a lot of work And so, for example, if you want to import Chinese tea, you have to speak Chinese. That's just not an option. You do have to know Chinese, the language. Maybe for other types of tea, like Indian tea, you could get by with English. But I think that there's definitely a lot of value to importing your own tea, because then you have a distinctive and unique product that other people don't have. But it is a huge amount of work. And also, I don't think there's anything wrong with repackaging other people's imported tea and selling it, as long as the tea itself is of quality. And you're curating, essentially at that point, you're curating a collection for people. And there's different ways of combining different teas from different sources into, flights and stuff like that. So I'd say that if you do want to get into the tea importing business, you're going to have to start, as Ashish has been saying, you're going to be putting in a huge amount of upfront overhead work into developing those relationships, because the relationships I have with my farmers, most of them have been developed over the better part of a decade. And that's just time. It's a lot of time and it's a lot of energy, and the payoff is way, way, way down the road. And then it's important also to work with people you trust, and also to make sure that relationship is sustainable. Elise, what's something that's great about Tiwit, and what Elise does is that her whole focus is on direct importing from the producers in a way that's sustainable. And in China, there's a lot of small tea farmers, but in places like India and Nepal and other places that she sources tea from, you have to really look, and in China too also, because the big factories can be very exploitative. And you have to be very careful about the quality of what you're sourcing and the ethics of what you're sourcing. And then being able to develop, at least for Chinese tea, it's very important to develop a personal relationship with people. And that's called guanxi, and that's how business is done in China. So to answer your question, if you're not expecting to see returns right away, and be able to have an MVP, a minimum viable product, that and a catalog that you can actually sell anytime soon, then I think that direct importing is much more. There's much more agency to that, and I find it to be very satisfying to have my own line of teas that are uniquely what I've sourced, and I know the people, I know the stories, I've seen the plants. There's a lot of value in that, but I think that there's a huge amount of space that, from a business perspective, it's going to be much easier to get started selling other people's teas and repackaging it. But yeah, that's my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, all
Thanks, Bob.
very true facts. And one other thing I want to add in is when you're direct importing, the logistics costs. Unless you have like a huge purchase order or a huge wholesale buyer that you're gonna like go into this business with, you're not going to hit any competitive economies of scale until you're importing at least 100 kilos at a time, which is very expensive. That's some money, and then you're going to have it sitting in your warehouse, and that's rent on your warehouse, and it won't sell right away unless you have like a purchase order, like before you go into business, and you have like some relationship with somebody that's going to take half of that off your hands right away. It's just a lot of risk to take on. So, yeah, that's my addition to that.
I'm a little bit too high. I'm Cynthia. I haven't spoken yet, but I've been listening. This is really fun. So I do a little bit of both. I have a small tea company in LA. And I find that in some ways having obviously, like kind of what Sohan said, the agency to be able to work directly with farmers is great, but there's also something to be said sometimes for being able to trust experts who have been spending time in regions for an exorbitant more amount of time than you have, to be something to be able to provide like a really high quality product. I know like if I was to be the one to go in certain areas as someone who's new in the industry and someone with a lot of language barriers, I would end up bringing home like a far inferior product. And that's not what I'm aiming to do. So being able to utilize other people in the industry who have that expertise has been really nice for me. And obviously, as with farmers, it's all about trust. It's all about transparency. But I think there's definitely benefit to both, but I don't think going down the route of putting a little bit more leniency or putting a little bit more effort into understanding who you're purchasing from, who might be like a US based supplier, and utilizing that as a way to kind of kickstart yourself as something that's, I think it's a good idea, possibly. Yeah.
There was another good question that came in through Facebook. I'll share. I think that'll be good. Sorry, Sam, cut you off. But one last one before breakout rooms. I think this will be great for everybody to kind of give their answer to. This is coming from Leo Nima. First of all, he says hello and good to see so many familiar faces again. And his question is, have sales gone up since quarantine? Has it been entirely through social media, or have you found success elsewhere? Any of the business owners here want to tune in on that?
I can. It's kind of a little bit of a give and take because online sales for me have definitely been better, but I'm also losing the avenue of a lot of my retail places. So selling for retail, like as ounce bag teas in stores that don't necessarily have their online game up. I've kind of like gone down in that aspect, but then online has increased. And cafes are ordering a lot less than they were originally. So it's like kind of fluctuates. It's not necessarily that it's an all up or all down.
What do you attribute your increase in online sales to? Is it social media, Instagram, or are you doing things extra to bring people's attention to your website?
Mostly online and Instagram has been big. I've started doing some Instagram lives, which I've actually had orders come in with notes saying I had seen you on this channel or whatever. People write little notes and things. And I've started doing a little bit more studying in on my digital marketing and SEO and trying to be a little bit better of rearranging my website. That maybe is playing into something, but that I don't know if it's been long enough that I've been doing that for. But I think just visibility on social media has been the biggest.
Priscilla has a question.
So, Han, I'm down to do an Instagram live. I'm getting more comfortable with them. They're making me nervous, but I'm getting better.
Hey, Priscilla, what's up? How you doing?
Hey, hello. Thank you guys for letting me attend this meeting from my bed. My body is not feeling very well today, so my bed is going to be my tea place today. So take me for allow this, and I'm just going to say that I'm very thankful with you guys for sharing this specific topic, because I don't live from tea. It's not my main business, but I have been thinking constantly and making the transition. Maybe someday, I don't know, of living medicine, living psychiatry, and start a tea business. It's not an easy choice for me, because I have passion for what I do, for medicine, for psychiatry. I love it, and I'm agree with Sam when you say that it depends the way you want to start your business, because I didn't want to belong to a big hospital or to work for somebody who pays me. I'm an independent doctor in that way. So when I opened my office, my consultation, I used to have one patient for a week or 3 patients per month, and it was hard to. So I think when you want to start an independent business and making money and being sustainable and still being ethical, it's going to grow slow. And in South America, in the other hand, something that you, Sam, were asking in a mail that you sent me, how it's going in South America. we have to buy tea to guys like you guys because you are a bigger community. Like Sohan said, you guys speak Chinese or have the direct contact, and so this is how I think the community is growing. And if I I make the step and I start a tea business, indeed, it's basic to have a tea community that has another contact. So I'm thankful that I have been in this chat today. Thanks for sharing your experiences. It's very enrichment for people who are not directly in the business like myself. And well, I wish you guys all the best and thank you very much.
Thanks, Priscilla.
Get better soon, Priscilla.
So thank you guys all so much for coming. Everybody's contact info and links to their website will be available in their profiles on teatalks.com. At this point, if you guys want, I can split us up into two breakout rooms. We would have 6 people in each. And in the smaller spaces, everybody gets to talk a little more if you guys want to keep going. Sound good?
Yep.
All righty.
Hi, Cynthia.
Bye, Cynthia.
So let's
See ya, Jay Davis. Brian, later.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Good to see you. All right, we're here. Elizabeth, thanks for tuning in earlier. What did you think about the conversation?
Oh, it was cool. It's really cool to hear from you guys. I don't know. I work with Sohan kind of with West China, so it's nice to like kind of get updated on what's going on through him. But I like to hear the other perspectives of the other tea business people because I'm still like relatively new to tea, so I don't hear from. I've just recently started getting into the online tea community as well.
Cool.
So I'm getting the new perspective from you guys.
I like your tea drinking environment.
Thank
very
you.
peaceful.
It's in my backyard.
How about you, Jeremy? Jeremy, looks like you're in a different place today. Where are you at?
In a different place?
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to rearrange things.
Cool.
Yeah, I had to create more of a studio look rather than a camera in my face and nothing more than that. So more professional this way. Slightly more professional.
Yeah, your audio sounding good today too.
Yeah, I think I'm getting better at that. But I need to get better at that because this is the new future, isn't it? Yeah. I think it's like we're all still trying to figure out whether or not this is the new normal. But I guess prepare for it now.
Exactly.
Anticipating it's going to be like this for a while.
Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Like, I know it's now, like doing Zooms and doing live is now, but like even beyond COVID-19 and when we get back to our normal social lives, is this still going to be something that people are going to like connect with and want to engage with?
I hope so. I feel like it'll probably taper off for a little bit. I'm sure people will come back around, especially if we like start forming the communities like you guys have been saying now. Mm-hmm. I feel like there'll definitely be more people that are down to just like join weekly or every other week for a little session just to keep up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spoke with a few people, and I think it really will. I don't think people will gravitate away from this when it's no longer necessary. I think it actually could be something that, the fact that we're talking with people from Brazil, like, I had a breakout room last Thursday. I had 2 people in it, just fine. One was from Seattle, one was from Berlin.
Wow.
So I think that idea, once people have that experience and how easy it is to connect with people, I think they can actually become, you adopt this now, but I don't think they're going to leave it. I think they'll stay with it once they realize how many people they meet and from all over the world, and once that community's in place.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Danny, how are your live sessions going? I know I've been seeing you do quite a bit on Instagram.
It's going well. I've started with way too much, like doing 4 lives a day. Like, wow. I was like exhausted talking to people, like having guests every day. And like, of course, my team was helping me with all the, like, I was choosing people and inviting people, and they were organizing everything and the topic and everything. And it was exhausting. Now we're doing like 3 times a week, and it's good. We've had like many new followers on Instagram, so it's working well in that matter. And also we're launching, like guys, Jeremy and Elizabeth, I have a tea school in Brazil. It's the largest tea school here. And then we online yet, and other new schools, they are already online, so it wasn't my plans. And like COVID just pushed me, like, now you have to go.
Mm-hmm.
And we're launching like some new online short courses next week. So hopefully we're gonna have new students, because like for the normal regular classes, we're doing them online as well, but we're a little bit afraid that some people will quit it. We're not sure yet what's gonna happen. Some students, like from last semester, are not paying regularly, so I think it's a problem everywhere. Like, people just stop paying for what they've already done. So yeah, we have.
What is the business model for your school?
So we have a tea sommelier course and a blending course. Those are like the main courses. Each one has 56 hours, so we do it like 4 weekends each course. And it's been working pretty well. Like, I've launched it in 2016. It was the first tea sommelier course and the first tea blending course. The tea blending course, we've launched it like 2 years ago. And I was like the only one, and now there are like 6 other tea schools here. So it's not that easy anymore. But so that's why, so we need to go online. We gotta go online. We're doing it. I'm recording many, many classes, and also with other teachers. I'm not so focused on tea sommelier and tea blending anymore. Like, I'm opening up, like other topics like Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, related to tea. So on my tea sessions, my lives, I realized that people in Brazil, they're really interested on other topics. Like tea sommelier and tea blending is like focused on who wants to work with tea. And some people, they just want to learn about tea. So that's the thing. Like, we're looking at, like, we're trying to get to reach those people right now.
Mm-hmm. So your classes are usually offline? They're usually like, do you have a facility for that, or do you rent out a space somewhere to do those classes?
We rent some places. So the concept of the school is, how do you say it? Let me think. What's the word for that? The itinerant school. That's the concept. Itinerant.
Mm-hmm.
Say that? Like, I'm a nomad. So the thing is that we open up like the classes in different cities in Brazil. So we've been so far São Paulo, we're there like every semester, and Curitiba, which is my hometown, it's in the south, so people drink a lot of tea. And then every semester on these two cities, and then Rio de Janeiro, Belo Horizonte, Brasilia, Fortaleza, Porto Alegre, Florianópolis, like many of the main capitals, we've been there already teaching people. So we rent places and we have like all of our stuff, the tea stuff, and we bring it together, and then we rent a place, and then we advertise, and we find students, and we bring the teachers from different cities. Like in the beginning it was just me, and now there are like 10 different teachers, so each one come from a different city, so it's very expensive to have that. So we're having trouble with that a little bit, so that's a good idea to put it online, so the expenses are going to be very like smaller with that. Like going online makes it easier. So since the other schools are already online, I have to do that. I mean, I'm not so into it, you know. It's been like 4 years. I'm like, I don't want to go online. I don't want to go online. How can you do sensory analysis online? You can't do that. Like, no, it's not going to work. But I must do that because all the other schools are doing that, and we're losing customers. We're losing students. So
yeah,
I have no other option. But we're going to keep like the offline classes for those who want to attend.
Yeah.
Which is my recommendation, of course. But then people can choose.
How many students have gone through your courses?
Like in the tea sommelier, over 300.
Wow.
Yeah, many people. And then on the tea blending, or on class number 8, so around 80 people. So we put around from 7 to 12 students a class, not more than 12. So it's been like, yeah, many people. And then like it's growing. And then the thing is that I hear you talking like today, and it's like, I don't know about like the whole tea community in the US, but seems like you're into importing tea. And here in Brazil, my perception is that people are more into blends. So those who are importing, they're importing blends from Germany or the US or Canada. There aren't many people importing like good quality tea, you know. And there are many people, like as I was saying about the marketplace, they own their own tea blending company, you know, like small tea blending company. So people are making their own blends and selling it online.
Yeah, well, you know, the more people that go through your course, I'm sure the more the market will change, you know, to less blends. Because that was the case here. You know, 5 years ago, it was very uncommon for tea brands to be exclusively focused on like unblended single origin teas.
It also kind of depends on the customer, because it was during the Midwest Tea Festival. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before. This woman was talking about how her business actually increased when Teavana opened up down the street. And what she was saying is that Teavana was all those fancy blends and flavors. And once people really got into those teas, they wanted to taste what the base teas were like. You know, like, oh, this is a fantastic, you know, Moroccan mint. I wonder what gunpowder tastes like. So Teavana didn't have that for them. So they literally walked right down the street, and she had all of that for them. But that was that market. It's like when I was doing things like that, I thought it would work as well here. And like that did, and people never really took to that. Like I'd sell them a peach flavored or like a peach and apricot flavored gunpowder, but they never came back to get gunpowder. So, you know, it's interesting. The market, the U.S. market is really finicky from place to place. It's really hard to figure out your customer. I've been at this in Indiana for about 2 years, and I still can't figure them out. So that's why I had to kind of re-strategize and hyper-focus on very specific markets and develop a strategy around that. Because it's not like I came to Terre Haute and I meet a demand that's already here. it'd just be like me trying to create a demand in a city, and that's just too much for me. And it's just not there. But in Kansas City was there. In Indiana, it wasn't. So it's hard. I mean, it really is hard to figure out the U.S. customer.
Little by little, like I've had a tea room here in Brazil, in Curitiba, like back in 2014 and 2015. No, 2015 and 2016. And I had like on my tea menu, I had 14 blends and 45 imported teas. So I've traveled the world, like I've been to 11 different tea producing countries, looking for tea producers just like Elise. So that's how we met in Nepal back in 2017. So I was like looking for the suppliers and tea producers and everything. So I was like, wow, now I've got it all. So I've opened the tea room, and then I've started making my own blends as well. And then 80% of my sales was blends. So like people were having at all the imported tea. So I was like, wow, now I have like kilos and kilos of those imported teas and nobody's having it. Like, wow. And then finally I've closed the tea room. I still have the company, like the tea blending, but I don't sell the imported teas anymore because like the market's not ready yet. You know, it's not ready. So I have to a little longer. So I still keep those contacts. So maybe within like 5 years, I'll launch it again. About the tea room, maybe later, because now I really love traveling. So I can't have a tea room. If I love to travel, I can't afford it. Like I can't do both. I've realized it. Maybe somebody can, but I can't do both. Like teaching and traveling around the world and then having a tea room, you have to be there and talk to your customers and everything. It's amazing, but like 2 different lives. Can't have them both.
Yeah, you gotta have a full-time
like I think that's
staff.
in a way that's like the better life, because my audience was I'm actually going to teach like theology and prayer through tea, and because I like just got started not that long ago, and everything was in place for kind of me to start doing classroom work. So I'd go to like churches and parishes and teach these classes about what you can learn of your faith through tea. So my dream, I mean, in my mind, the dream was this is going to be fantastic. I'll be the nomadic tea merchant going from town to town, from like parish to parish, and teach all these courses and create this network. I was excited about that, but then that was kind of taken away. But, you know, basically forced into this, you know, it's like forced into necessity. So I have to find out a way to replicate that idea online. So that's going to be tricky because I'm new to most of this. But yeah, the itinerant lifestyle was my hope. Now it's a sedentary lifestyle, and we all have to adjust to it somehow. Yeah.
So there was somebody on YouTube watching that was just commenting about Teavana, how important role Teavana had played in popularizing tea and kind of creating that hype and that kind of movement around tea. But yeah, of course, it was all blends and, you know, not great teas. So I think it's important to, you know, to both criticize and celebrate it, you know, because without Teavana, there'd be like probably no tea culture in the United States now, or it would be like even more niche than it currently is. Teavana at least made like loose leaf something exciting and different, you know, comparable to coffee. But yeah, it did leave like kind of a uneducated palate, a very uneducated palate. Like there was a lot of like wrong information that they used to, as the authority of tea, they, you know, like the caffeine levels on tea. There's still people that have to be educated that black tea doesn't have the most caffeine. You know, Teavana had like this spectrum that, you know, white tea had the least amount of caffeine and black tea had the most, which is, you know, opposite actually.
I agree totally. Tivana was something for me. Like when I was a little younger, I would go to Tivana, and I would consider that like the start of my like tea journey, I guess, because that's how I truly got into like drinking loose leaf stuff, and then I started doing herbals. But yeah, Tivana definitely was a great introduction. I mean, not really that great, but it got me like realizing that I actually love tea. And then when I found the tea house, I was like, oh, this is what I wanted all along. I just didn't know it existed. So
Yeah.
And that was that was Guanyin Tea House?
Yeah, Guanyin.
Cool.
No.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Oh no, I always liken Tivana to my hometown because I grew up in the desert, right, California. So Tivana was like my hometown. It's like I have no intention of ever going back, but it served its purpose. I was so happy to leave. I was thrilled to leave. I'm never going back, but it did exactly what it needed to do.
Well, that's okay because your hometown burned down, so you can't go back.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Although I think a lot of the mall locations got replaced by new, different brands of pretty much the same product being sold. So yeah, I guess you could get back to that. But there's David's Tea now, at least you can go there.
Yeah.
It's not in Brazil yet. There is no Tivana here yet.
Well, there won't be. It's dead. It's done. Yeah.
Like the Starbucks of teas. I think they actually are owned by, or at least were owned by Starbucks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know about this.
I think Starbucks used to own.
There are many Starbucks stores, but not as many as in the US, of course. Like even like in my hometown, there are no Starbucks. So it's like, what? It's city. It has like 3 million people, and there's no Starbucks here.
Well, I think
on every corner where I am.
I've never been to Brazil before, but I would like to come. Yeah, and I'll definitely let you know when I come. I have friends there, but I used to work with a Brazilian, and he had a ritual every day of preparing coffee, and it seemed to me it wasn't just his ritual. It seemed to be like a very cultural thing. So like perhaps the ritual of preparing coffee for yourself, with your snack or whatever you take in the afternoon, is something that is more important to people in Brazil than the social activity of going to Starbucks to, have your cup, that social status. It could be that. Which is good, because Starbucks are terrible. The coffee's not good. It's not. It's over roasted. It's low quality and over roasted.
There are many coffee shops in Brazil with very good, very very good coffee. I mean, of course, coffee producers wow, they're like you have many options for coffee here. And for mate, of course, but like the coffee is much developed. Like mate is not so developed. As I was saying last week in the virtual tea festival, like we're trying to do that now with my NGO. Like we're trying to put like the terroirs. How do you say that in English? Terroir?
Yep.
So we're trying to do that in mate because there's no such thing yet. Still like it's been happening for like 3 or 4 generations and they're not so organized yet. But yeah, as for coffee and mate, people really like having it, but tea is something very very new in Brazil, so we have big challenge here, but it's going well. Like everyone who's working with tea has been having results, and like my students, they're now also like teaching, or they have their own businesses or Instagram accounts. So there are many tea Instagram accounts in Brazil. Really, yeah.
You should put on a tea festival.
Yeah, I should.
Get everybody together. I'm sure they'd all appreciate that.
Yeah, we're doing a little bit of that on slow tea, like trying to bring people together, you know. Yeah, but yeah, people are relating well. Like as you were saying the other like 2 weeks ago, and I was on this talks that people are relating well. Like people who work with tea in Brazil, they know each other. There aren't many people yet, so it's going well. Of course, like this ego competition stuff.
Yeah, that exists everywhere, and it's so weird that it exists in tea, but it's business. Ultimately,
I was like, no way. When I came back from my first tea trip, I was like traveling for 9 months, and I was like amazed on how people from every country they've just accepted me. You know, like they've taught me so much about tea, and I was back in Brazil like tea is something else. You know, people they accept each other. They, you know, it's different. There's no competition. There's no anything. So I was like amazed with that. But now it's happening. So even my students, they were like, Danny, you were saying that there was no competition in tea and we believed in you. And now there is. And I was like, yeah, but there wasn't. What can we do?
Yeah. And it's like it's not competition for money necessarily, because no one's really making money. It's more of an ego. It's more of an ego thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is
it's bizarre. Yeah.
That's
it's like I'm the first one to do that. I was the first one, so people just want to have their trophies, you know, like here. What's the point? You know, like why?
Yeah, that's the main conflict that I deal with in my business, that I'm constantly having to like remind myself to be humble. Like I don't mind that ego part of it. Like even if I'm the first to do something, I don't care. It's not anything important to me. But what I do care is that like I have opened everything up. Like even like participating in stuff like this, like create all these connections, you know, could pull away from my business and all my efforts. It really could. Introducing all the farmers and making all those connections for people could negatively affect my stuff. I'm not so afraid of that, but when it does happen, like that's like when my ego gets hurt a little bit of like, oh, I trusted that person and like opened my whole books to them and let them come in and shared with them, and they just, you know, disrespected it. And yeah, that's difficult, you know, to stay focused and optimistic that this is my calling. You know, and it's not just my ego telling me that. It's like my business mentors and, you know, the leaders in my life that tell me, no, you shouldn't be so transparent. That stuff, like you should make everybody pay for that stuff. And I think, you know, like first of all, people can't pay for it. It's not, you know, something that I should expect businesses to do. And then that's not gonna accomplish the ultimate goal of like creating an actual viable economic opportunity for marginalized people and the rural parts of the world. Like your experience of like where we met in Nepal, you know, like there's a ton of small growers that we met there, and you could, you know, take, you know, 5 kilos of everybody's tea and bring it back to you and like build your own exclusive cool brand. And as the tea explorer that, you know, oh, I can only get this tea from Danny. But then, you know, those farmers are actually sitting on 5 tons of tea, not 5 kilos of tea. And they want to sell all 5 tons of that tea, not just 5 kilos. So, you know, for me, it's much more important to figure out how to like find a viable economic opportunity for all 5 tons of their tea versus just 5 kilos in my ego and my brand.
It's great. It's a great job you're doing.
Yeah. So the person on from Denmark on YouTube asked a funny question. We can kind of change the subject to answer his question. He asked, "What's the strangest thing you've ever found in your tea? I had a box of everything from chicken feathers, hair, nails, bits of other plants. lead weights, and more just from pu'er? Anybody want to answer that?
I don't think I've found anything that weird in my tea other than just tea. Luckily. But I don't know. That's crazy. It must be maybe like factory tea? I know Sohan said he's found like fingernails and gross stuff like that in tea.
Yeah.
From factory tea, I guess.
Yeah, so yeah, the factory stuff is definitely going to be more vulnerable to that. But, you know, even the people that Sohan works with, because I've traveled with Sohan and, you know, I support Sohan's work, you know, as a proxy within my own business, and spent some time at the factories where the tea is made. And yeah, their sanitation standard is a lot different than what we have here. You know, oftentimes they're withering the leaf like right in the road, and there's a market with chickens hanging out right next to it, so it's not a surprise that the chicken feathers get in. And the FDA is trying to enforce some new regulations to bring that standard up so that doesn't happen. But definitely in the factory tea, like the big scale factory tea, when they're making, you know, tons and tons in one batch, lots of stuff. Cigarette butts is probably like the most common one.
Yeah, I've heard that one too.
Yeah, because they can chain smoke while they're processing. At one time I was in a village in Hangzhou area where Longjing or Dragon Well is made, and we were trying to produce a video for the tea maker. And it was late at night. Like, that's when they do the last step of the last, hand frying step to dry the tea is late at night. And they do it all night long because they do it in small batches. They can only do like 200 grams at a time in the wok. And so we have like the camera on, and he's got like 3 ashtrays like right on the outside of the wok, just like heaping with cigarette butts. And we're like, hey, can we move your ashtray so it's not in the frame? And he was like, no, I need a place to put my cigarettes. And he's like having one in his like chain smoking. And we're like, actually, can you not smoke while we film? Like, you know, American customers don't like this. And he says, no, how do you expect us to stay up all night and make the tea? We have to smoke.
True story. It's so hard to film things. When I was in, we shooted like a series in India and Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And it's hard to film things because the factories are like, oh my God, we can't record it. And then we can't record that either. And we can't record that either. So it's like you have to do like close on everything so it won't show the reality. So I'm so afraid because now I should be in India. So this Monday, I should be traveling to India, bringing a group there for a tea expedition. So we would visit the tea gardens and everything. So we're going to postpone it to October probably. But then I was a little bit afraid, like on how people realize the reality really is, you know? I mean, the true story, how the factory really is, how the factories really are. Even the best ones in India, Sri Lanka, you know, those like Thailand, Taiwan, China, it's not pretty. It's not, you have, oh, this tea is gorgeous. It's amazing. So the story and the take of this and that. And then you see the factory and it's like, it's scary. I don't know how people are going to react. I'll let you know.
Yeah. Yeah, you had somebody filming with you when I met you. What did you guys end up doing with all that content?
We haven't finished yet, so we're trying to sell it to some TV channels in Brazil. But like since the new president came in, the cinema is gone in Brazil. So we're not sure yet what we're gonna do because like cinema is really not working anymore. Like he has cut all the funds for cinema. So we've been approved by two TV channels, but they can have the funding to finish like the editing and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So not sure what we're gonna do. We're probably gonna put it on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, just
Just not to
self-publish.
lose it because it's been like a long time already. It's been 3 years already.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get funding from like India T-board and from Sri Lanka T-board, and the money doesn't come. So we've tried in TVs and we've tried like so many different ways. So I don't know what to do anymore. A lot of content, and it's just on my hard disk.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
useless like that. We should just put it on online.
Yeah. Well, maybe one day you'll find the use, and it can always be repurposed. I mean, even if you put it out in YouTube in one fashion, it can always be repurposed, for television or something else if those opportunities come up.
Usually, if you put it on YouTube, then any TV channel, the TV channels won't buy it anymore.
Yeah, you repurpose it.
Yeah,
you have to a whole new thing.
There's
yeah.
no problem. Yeah. We'll just do it again. There's no problem. I like to travel, so we'll just do it again. Better quality filming and everything.
Yeah, I would think that a TV network or any type of network would want to film themselves with their own gear and their own team and such.
Yeah, like Netflix, for example, they demand a certain kind of quality, we didn't have. Mm-hmm. So we're not up for Netflix, for example.
Yeah.
With that content. We've also filmed another series in the Amazon with some indigenous tribes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, very nice. Like the plants they have, like, oh my gosh. But then there's a different problem about have those plants approved by the food sanitation,
Michael on Facebook said that Discovery Channel just bought some footage off of him from YouTube.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so just do it.
I should try to do it. Thanks. You're giving me some hope. Yay! Bye, guys. I gotta go.
There is hope. Yep. Yeah, there is hope. Our friend from Denmark wants to know how each of us got into tea. I don't know, Jeremy. Do you wanna jump in and give your story first?
I can give you the short version.
Okay.
The really short version is basically I was looking for it in Terre Haute. I couldn't find any good quality loose leaf tea. So I found a way to sell it. So I got in touch with wholesalers and I sold it myself. But essentially what it was is I lived in Scotland for 3 years and I never had a cup of tea in my life until I moved to Scotland. Mm-hmm. And then when I came back to the States, I reverted right back to coffee. Mm-hmm. And then it got to the point where it wasn't good anymore. I just didn't like it anymore. So when I went looking for tea, it wasn't there. So I figured I'm the one that's going to bring it to Terre Haute, Indiana. And everyone's going to love it. And everyone's going to buy it. And it's... so basically, it's kind of like I started it almost out of personal need. But then it took years for the business to develop, to have a strategy, have more of a purpose to it. But that's, I guess, the shortest version of that.
Danny, what about you? I don't think I've heard your story.
Yeah, actually, I was an advertiser. I used to work in advertising agencies as a copywriter. Didn't really like it because I was like, what's selling things that nobody wants to buy? What's the point on it? So then I went to France. I moved to France for an exchange program. And then I fell in love with food, with cuisine. And then I decided to study cooking, to take cooking classes. I moved to Argentina to take cooking classes. And while I was there, it was back in 2010, I've realized there were like many tea shops opening up. And I was like, I think it's gonna happen in Brazil. So then I realized that, and then I was the first one, like one of the first ones to do that in Brazil. So I came back here, I've started my business plan, I've did like an MBA on to open up my tea room. And then, since there was no tea schools in Brazil back then, I just sold my car. I've sold my car and I went traveling the world looking for information and studying with tea masters and working in tea farms. So I was like working in Thailand, and oolong tea farm in Thailand, black tea farm in Turkey, green tea farm in China, and then I went to many different countries. Yeah, that's it. And then I came back and I've started my tea brand, my tea room, and then my tea school, and then I can't stop it anymore. As it happens with everyone, right?
And Elizabeth, you told us your story briefly, but maybe you could tell us a little bit more, and then also maybe some like aspirations that you have for your tea life.
Yeah, I came across the tea house. One of my old managers had mentioned it to me because she had also just moved to Austin. This was like about 2 years ago. And yeah, she was like, you should totally check out this tea house. It's really cool. So I went there with a friend, and I was like super mesmerized by it. I was like, what is this? I've never seen it before, but I love it. And so I was like, how do I find out more about how to make it? And he directed me to his YouTube channel, Sohan did. So I learned a lot of like how to actually start tea, and also like types of tea and stuff. I learned a lot about that from Tea House Ghost. Yeah, I just started going really regularly. I was definitely like a hardcore regular, just hanging out at the tea house at any spare moment. And I was a tea server there for probably about like half a year, maybe a little longer than that. Because once I got really into it, you can take like the classes and serve at like a community, and you'd have to serve for all the owners, and then you're like a tea server. So I was a tea server at Guanyin Tea House for a little bit. And yeah, that was just a really cool experience, getting to make tea for a lot of people at once and stuff. And aspirations, I am really enjoying like being involved with the tea community and the tea company as well. And I think tea is like a pretty solid direction that I hope to go in for like future career-wise. Yeah, I'm just working with the new tea house. I'll definitely be a server there as well, and then see what comes up after that. Because a goal is to open up a ton of more tea houses with wholesale with West China. So I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't have any solid plan though.
Guys, I gotta go have another meeting.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say I gotta go too.
Yeah, we should sign out. Yeah, we've been here for a couple hours now, but yeah, thank you so much. It was really nice to connect and catch up. And
it was really great to be here again. So see you next week.
Yeah, see everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Have a nice weekend. Thanks for everything.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Aloha.